Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. There are things, especially in sports, that I notice because we're both in this business, that you wonder why they haven't taken place sooner. And then over the course of time, like if you really think about analytics, why did it take so long for NBA
Yeah.
GMs to figure out
Right.
math?
Three is worth more than two.
It's, yeah, like
Yeah.
it's what happened? Did a slide ruler fall into a GM's office and he had doodling one day with time? It's so here's one of them. I believe exits. The smartest people I've met did not always go to great schools or have great childhoods. In fact, I would argue there's a certain jet fuel to chaos as a child that propels you to an aspirational life, right?
Sure.
And at any one time in the history of the NFL, there's about 5 rock star coaches. And right now it's, Sean Payton took Chernobyl, and 2 years later they're going to make the playoffs with a rookie quarterback and dead cap hell. Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid. There's a handful. I think McVay and Shanahan fall into that group. And Pro Football Talk suggested the Bears should call Kyle Shanahan. And I'm just going to throw this out. Exits. So Kyle Shanahan is smart. He has a losing record in San Francisco as a head coach without Christian McCaffrey, who is now into the twilight of his career. Hurt a lot in Carolina, more so in San Francisco. He is staring down the barrel of signing Brock Purdy, injured for the second time, to a big deal. It is an old, expensive, brittle roster. And he has the least talented quarterback. And here are the Bears. Good roster. He'd get power. Quarterback's free for 4 years. He's got weapons, actually a decent back. And it's a restart. And you'd say to yourself, why? Because just like San Francisco was a dead franchise. Hell, the Warriors were a dead franchise for years. But the minute they got good, people are like, oh, Rick Barry, Chris Mullin. Certain franchises are dead. The New York Giants are. The Bears feel like they are. But again, the Warriors were. The Niners were. Chicago is a massive football brand. And to be the savior of it in an offensive era, I said this today, I would absolutely say, here's 3 first-round picks. We got our quarterback. I don't need that. Here we go, Kyle Shanahan. I think staring down the barrel of Christian McCaffrey's age, Brock Purdy getting the bag, an old, expensive roster with a lot of Debo and Ayuk questions, I think he takes the call. Am I nuts?
No, you're not nuts, but I mean, you don't really trade with him, right? Like the Niners have to agree to trade.
That's right. You call
Yeah,
the Niners.
so like do the not because Kyle Shanahan maybe is interested in the exit, but are the Niners interested in it? Like I would absolutely say the Bears get the 12th pick in the draft. Of course, I would trade the 12th pick in the draft for Kyle Shanahan. Like it's not even, yes, of course. The guy took Jimmy Garoppolo to a Super Bowl. He took Brock Purdy to a Super Bowl. I'm thinking he could do wonders with Caleb Williams. Like I want a known commodity. It would be amazing. I'd call the Rams and ask about Sean McVay. Absolutely. I hire an offensive coach, the most proven one that you can find to develop and stabilize for Caleb Williams. However they have to go about getting that, I'd be all for. The Niners situation is an interesting one. They still have a ton of talent on the roster. It's old and brittle and expensive, like you said. I don't think it's a disaster. Like I think if you asked a Vegas odds maker, hey, what are the preseason Super Bowl favorites for next year? I'd be shocked if the Niners were outside of the top 6 in terms of preseason odds. We don't know, are they going to pay Debo? We don't know if Trent Williams is going to come back, but like they got a lot of talent still on that team and they had a freaky amount of injuries. So I don't know if he looks at it as dire as you do. I hope he does. Like, because the Bears have no evidence that they can just conduct a search and hire the right guy.
Right.
They have
So
no
try to.
evidence of it. They used a search firm and had Ernie Accorsi consult them on John Fox, and then they had a general manager draft Mitch Trubisky without telling John Fox that that was going to happen, and then they made John Fox coach Mitch Trubisky. Like it's so dysfunctional for so long in that hiring, firing, like 30,000 foot view part of the organization that if Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, the president and GM, go the trade for a coach route, they've never done it before. So I'm in for it. And then just one thing to your point, Chicago, I've said this to you before. It's unified by the Bears. The 85 Bears still have media deals. They still drink for free. Mike Ditka, and I know he was a cult of personality, but I mean, the guy made tens of millions of dollars from merchandising. I mean, he was on ESPN for forever. He had cigars, he had wine, he had restaurants, he had video games. Like he had everything from being the coach of the Bears who won the Super Bowl. So it matters when you win a Super Bowl everywhere, but a parade in Chicago would be different than a parade in Los Angeles or Cincinnati. So I would think a lot of coaches who currently have jobs, not just Ben Johnson or Cliff Kingsbury, I would think a lot of coaches, if the Bears are in the market to trade for a coach, I think a lot of coaches would call their agent and say, "Hey, can I get on that list?"
So not that I was late to TikTok, but my wife, 15 minutes when that stuff came out, she strolls it every morning. She's got recipes, and I mean, she's constantly saying, "Oh God, I saw this recipe. I got to try it." And the dog videos, and I'll be playing Wordle, and I'll be reading, CNN or the New York Times or whatever I'm reading. And my wife is and she'll read that stuff, but she's
Yeah.
scrolling. I mean, just through it. And so I don't know what it is, but and I'm going to suggest to you what it is, I guess, is that over the last 3 weeks, I have just had this compulsion to go on TikTok. And I think it's the UAPs and the UFOs that I find it hysterical. I do not believe in them. I never have. With the Hubble telescope and the other telescopes, if they were out there, we would see them. I'm not going to trust Clancy in middle of Indiana at night, 4 Heinekens in, to tell me, here are aliens. So people say things, they'll say it's incredibly arrogant to think we're the only people in the galaxy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying with the technology we have, I don't think Merle would spot it. I think our telescopes would, and that I don't believe any of this stuff. But I am fascinated when people go to the sky, often in the flight line of a major airport, and go, "Look at that." And I'm like, yeah, I live near LAX. There's 40 of those puppies lined up. And the further they are away, the more they look like UFOs. Now, tell me your stance on UFOs. And on TikTok, there's now like UFOs today, 1,000 pictures come up, videos.
It was in the news in New Jersey yesterday. Like Carton on Breakfast Ball was like, "Did you see the UFOs over my house?" I was like, "No, I didn't." And he was like, "Oh yeah." And he showed me a news clip. And you watch the video and he's like, "What do you think that is?" I'm like, "Buddy, I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's an alien. Like, I don't think it's Spock." Like I am not arrogant enough to believe that we're the only thing in the galaxy, but I'm also not arrogant enough to believe that I can explain it. And my cynical nature or distrust of whatever is like, it's probably us. Like the government doesn't tell us everything. Like it's probably us.
That's
Or
right.
China or a
Yeah.
military exercise of some kind, or what, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what it is. I'm not saying that people don't see things, and I'm not at all claiming that we get the full story, but I don't necessarily think it's Spock.
Yeah. So back before the stealth was created, I worked in Vegas. I worked in Vegas from like 87 to 93 or
Yeah.
something like that. So we had a reporter, Dan Burns, and he kept getting these calls because he did like our aviation beat, right? We had a mob beat, an aviation beat, and all that stuff. And Dan Burns was this great reporter, and he kept getting calls about these triangular shaped lights people would see. And it was like a 2 year deal. And, then the Iraq war hit, and the stealth was now part of our national discussion, right? That we had the word stealth, but stealth bombers, CNN, when they flew in and under the radar, well, they were testing them at Area 51, among other
Sure.
places. So people weren't crazy. They were seeing things, but they wanted that to be secret. So I'm with you. I think our government is, first of all, uh, drones. Well, you knew our government was going to create at some point super drones, like drones that you're not going to get anywhere else. I mean, you hear about the government, what they want to do with like the Bitcoins and cryptocurrency. And you hear stories from business people, entrepreneurs about what they wanted to do with AI in the Biden White House. Regardless of what side you are on the spectrum, they like to get their arms around stuff, fortify it, modify it, and control it. That's what our government does. Probably more than we're comfortable with. So I'm with you. I tend to think they're experimenting and they want to see how the public reacts. They want to see how visible it is. They want to see if they can hide it from the public. I think this has just happened my entire life.
Absolutely. I mean, Colin, my 4-year-old has a drone. Like they have, I mean, drone technology has been around for a while. It was a big part of the Obama presidency, certainly. And now, like,
Yeah.
you can buy one for $40. So I think there's a bunch of stuff that the couple, what is it, $1 trillion defense budget? My guess is they got some pretty cool toys. Like that occasionally Merle or Clancy or whatever sees, and they're just not going to tell us what it is. But I also think we want to believe stuff. And media works for a reason, and movies make hundreds of millions of dollars for a reason. Like Independence Day is a hell of a watch. Like it's a great
Yeah.
movie. Alien versus Predator. There's a reason why it's a franchise. It's a fun story. We don't want to believe that I got a mortgage and a wife and a couple of kids, and if you're lucky, you get 80 years, and then you go into the ground, and there's nothing before us, and there's nothing after us, and you know what I mean. We want to believe in extra cool stuff, and there's a reason why Twilight and Stranger Things and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and all of that stuff is so popular. It's fun to believe in things that are overwhelmingly likely not real. We just are, we're easy, we are, I don't blame people for believing in it, I guess is my point, because we are fed so much stuff to make it seem like Game of Thrones, that dragon looked real. I'm sorry. I don't know what a real dragon is, but I'm like, it looked real. Like we get inundated with a bunch of fantasy in a way where I understand why people want to believe in stuff.